She was just an intern at the company, but a single glance was all it took to shatter the control of the most powerful and desired CEO in the financial market. Between contracts and meetings, forbidden touches were born, stolen kisses were shared, and nights unfolded where pleasure spoke louder than reason. But was a man accustomed to dominating everything truly ready to surrender himself completely? Prepare yourself. This story will make you feel every last drop of desire. The clock read 8:30 in the morning when the mirrored glass doors of the Santis Investments building slid open, revealing a figure that seemed to slow time itself. Luna Vázquez crossed the lobby with decisive steps, the click of her thin-strapped stilettos echoing the steady rhythm of her hips. She wore a black pencil skirt that molded her curves with surgical precision, and a white silk blouse that, under the soft light, hinted at the discreet outline of her lingerie. It wasn't vulgar, it was elegant and dangerously sensual. Her dark brown hair fell in soft waves to her waist, and her eyes, two orbs of warm amber, seemed to scan every detail around her with a disquieting calm. Luna didn't look down. She never looked down. On the 43rd floor, behind a wall of smoked glass, Lorenzo de Santis was watching. Seated at a massive oak desk, he wore a tailored dark suit, the tie loosened around the collar of his white shirt, the cuffs rolled up as if he had just finished a negotiation that demanded more than it should have. But at that moment, nothing demanded more of him than the woman crossing his lobby. "Who is she?" he asked, his eyes never leaving the screen, displaying the internal security feed. Marcella, his personal assistant for over 7 years, cleared her throat before answering. The new intern in the legal department, Luna Vázquez, 23 years old, from USP, recommended by Dr. Almeida. She's in her final year, highly recommended. Was all he said, but his gaze remained fixed on her, sharp as a dagger. Luna was led to human resources by a smiling receptionist. As she waited, seated in a beige leather armchair, she could feel them, the stares, the judgments, and more than anything, the invisible weight of being underestimated. She knew her body commanded attention, knew there was a calculated risk in dressing the way she did, but she also knew what she carried in her mind, and that, to her, was her true weapon. "Let the games begin," adjusting the strap of her Prada bag on her shoulder. The first meeting of the day was chaos. Heated discussions about mergers, financial projections, and image risks. And even with experienced analysts in the room, it was Luna's voice that cut through the noise. "Excuse me, gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying a faint, elite Sao Paulo accent, though her origins were anything but. "There is a clause in the French group's proposal that contradicts the International Compliance Code. If we proceed with this without revision, we open ourselves up to an investigation by the CVM." Silence. Every eye in the room turned to her. Lorenzo, who had been standing by the window, pivoted slowly on his heels, his gaze locking onto hers with a glacial intensity. "Which clause, Miss Vasquez?" She didn't hesitate. Clause 17, paragraph 2. The granting of indirect bonuses to board members. It's subtle, but it's clearly a disguised compensation attempt. I reviewed the contract last night. He arched an eyebrow. A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. Excellent. Keep an eye on it. Luna felt a tremor of victory, fighting to control the hammering of her heart against her ribs. When the meeting ended, Lorenzo walked past her, too close. Close enough for her to smell the sweet, woody scent of his skin. He said nothing. He just looked at her, a look that said everything. Later, Luna was alone in the copy room, trying to figure out the new scanning system, when the door clicked shut behind her. She didn't turn around immediately. She knew who it was. "Are you enjoying the company?" Lorenzo's deep, velvety voice came from a few feet behind her. "Yes, sir. It's an intense environment," she replied, her tone perfectly professional. He took another step closer. She could feel the heat radiating from his body now. His cologne was sophisticated and penetrating, a blend of power and danger. "You know, Miss Vasquez, people who can't handle the pressure don't last very long here." She turned slowly, meeting his gaze with unwavering firmness. "Good thing I breathe under pressure." Silence. He studied her as one might appraise a rare work of art, searching for invisible flaws. "We'll see." And then he was gone, leaving her alone, her heart racing and her breath caught in her throat. That night, Luna returned to her small apartment in Villa Maddalena. She kicked off her heels, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat down in front of her laptop. She reread the French company's contract, making notes, trying to focus. But Lorenzo's presence wouldn't leave her mind. He was arrogant, controlling, dominant. A man who didn't ask, he commanded. And that, in some inexplicable way, provoked her. Luna knew why she was there. She had a goal, a reason for accepting this internship. But she hadn't counted on Lorenzo de Santis. And she certainly hadn't counted on what he was beginning to awaken in her. The game had only just begun. The following days were a silent game of provocations, though neither of them would dare admit it. Luna moved through the corridors with her impeccable posture, her fitted skirts and high heels composing a symphony of unrestrained sensuality. Every glance she sent Lorenzo's way was meticulously calculated. There was nothing innocent about it. There was power, and a veiled invitation. Lorenzo, for his part, tried to maintain his mask of the cold, unreachable CEO. But inside, a different kind of hell was brewing. His body reacted to the mere scent of her perfume as she passed. The soft sound of her voice, the way she moistened her lips while reading a contract. Everything about her seemed designed to unnerve him, and it was working. That Thursday, the tension finally overflowed. "Miss Vasquez, my office, now." Lorenzo's voice over the intercom was clipped, authoritarian. Luna rose, without hesitation, walking through the corridors like someone marching to their execution, or to their prize. She knocked and entered. "You sent for me?" He didn't answer right away. His back was to her as he stared out the window. When he turned, his dark eyes were more intense than ever. "What are you trying to do?" She furrowed her brow slightly, feigning innocence. "I'm sorry." "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Luna." She walked slowly to his desk, resting her hands on the dark wood, her eyes locked on his. "I'm just doing my job." He rounded the desk and stopped, far too close. Their breaths were already mingling. "Don't play games with me," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I am a man accustomed to being in control. But since you walked through that door, I can no longer think straight." Her heart hammered, but her expression remained firm. "Perhaps, sir, you're just losing control to the wrong woman." He stared at her for a second that felt like an eternity. Then, in a sudden, raw impulse, His hands gripped her face, pulling her forcefully toward him. Luna gasped but didn't retreat. Instead, she pressed her body against his, feeling the hard ridge of desire growing beneath his tailored trousers. The kiss was hot, urgent, hungry. Their mouths met with a contained fury. He explored her lips with a possessiveness, as if marking his territory. She responded with equal intensity, lightly biting his lower lip and drawing a low groan from him. His hand slid down to her hips, squeezing, pulling, dominating, and Luna, far from being intimidated, dug her nails into his chest through his half-open shirt. "You're dangerous, Luna," he murmured between kisses, "and I'm addicted." She smiled, her eyes glittering. "Then don't stop now." They stole minutes of searing kisses, bold caresses, and ragged breaths. But the ringing of the phone shattered the moment, pulling them back to reality. Lorenzo pulled away, his eyes still heavy with desire. "Get out, now. Before I do something, I can't hide behind a locked door." Luna straightened her blouse, smiled with a hint of malice, and whispered as she left, "But I like open doors, Lorenzo." He didn't sleep that night. He spent hours replaying that touch, that kiss, that scent. And for the first time in years, Lorenzo de Santis felt vulnerable. Luna, on the other hand, slept with a smile on her face. She didn't just want his body. She wanted all of him, and he was already starting to give it to her. The next morning in Morsi, Luna entered the office with the same calculated elegance as always. But there was something new in her stride, a silent announcement. She knew what she had done. More importantly, she knew what she had provoked. Lorenzo watched her discreetly from behind the glass of his office, his jaw tight. The scent of her skin was still seared into his memory. The taste of her mouth, the press of her hips, her muffled moan. He had crossed a line. And the worst part? He felt no regret at all. At 10 o'clock, Marcella entered with the day's agenda. And among the meetings and contracts, one detail caught his attention. At 7 p.m., you have the MRA Holdings cocktail party at the resort in Angra dos Reis. Would you like me to reschedule? Lorenzo thought for a few seconds. Then he lifted his dark eyes and said, as if he'd just devised a master plan, "No, book a double ticket. I'm taking an intern with me, Luna Vázquez." Marcella's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. But, ever the professional assistant, she didn't question him. She simply made a note. Luna nearly dropped her pen when she received the email. "Good afternoon, Ms. Vázquez. By order of CEO Lorenzo de Santis, you have been selected to accompany him to the MRA Holdings cocktail party. Today, at 7 p.m., at the Costa Imperial Resort in Angra dos Reis. Formal attire. Departure at 3 p.m. A driver will collect you." She read it 3 times. Then she crossed her legs, bit her lower lip, and smiled. The game had begun, and he was playing right along. The executive jet took off with a gentle climb. Luna wore a form-fitting black dress with a plunging back and a side slit that revealed more than it concealed. Lorenzo, seated beside her, made no attempt to hide his gaze. The silence between them was charged with tension, a quiet electricity that vibrated with every breath. "Do you like games, Luna?" he asked, pouring wine for them both. "That depends on the prize. And what if the prize is dangerous?" She turned slowly toward him, crossing her legs with deliberate calm. "Sometimes the danger is the most exciting part." Lorenzo smiled, a slow, knowing smile, full of intent. Be careful. I'm not a man who plays to lose. Neither am I. The resort was a paradise of luxury, tall palm trees, a view of the turquoise sea, discreet waiters, and an atmosphere that seemed designed for sophisticated sins. During the cocktail party, Lorenzo and Luna remained professional, but there was an invisible current between them that made everyone around them notice something, even if they didn't know what it was. At one point, he came up behind her as she was watching the sea from the terrace. You know what you're doing to me, don't you? She turned slowly, her eyes shining under the amber light of the outdoor lamps. And do you know what you're doing to me? He lightly touched her face with his fingertips. Then his hand slid to the nape of her neck, pulling her into a kiss that was, this time, slow and hot. A kiss of possession. But before it could deepen, he pulled back. Come on, let's go up. The resort's presidential suite was absurdly opulent. White marble, a panoramic view of the sea, a king-sized bed draped in Egyptian cotton sheets. But Luna had no time to admire the decor. As soon as they were inside, Lorenzo locked the door, dropped his jacket on the floor, and pressed her against the wall, his eyes burning with desire. I've controlled myself long enough, she gasped as he bit her collarbone, slowly pulling down the zipper of her dress. The fabric slid from her body, as if it had been designed to fall right there, in that moment. Lorenzo looked at her, as if he were before a banquet he had been waiting years to devour. Am I yours now? She provoked, breathless. No, Luna, he answered, his voice raw, his eyes on fire. You are mine. And that night, he had her. Without rush, without mercy, with hunger, with desire, with reverence, and with savagery. With every touch, she felt the world crumble and rebuild itself around his body. Lorenzo discovered in her a rare kind of surrender, a pleasure that defied explanation. And Luna, under the hands of this dominant man, discovered something she didn't want to admit. She was falling in love. The weekend in Angra dos Reis wasn't just a business trip. It was the beginning of an addiction, a silent pact between two bodies that could no longer live apart. The morning after their first night, Luna woke up tangled in the white sheets, golden shafts of sun piercing the half-drawn curtains. The room still smelled of him and of her. She turned her head and found Lorenzo standing on the balcony, his back to her, wearing only a pair of white linen trousers slung low on his hips. His bare torso, firm and sculpted with muscles that seemed carved by hand, reflected the sunlight like a living work of art. She watched him in silence for a few seconds before rising, clad only in a thin black silk nightgown that clung to her body like a second skin. Thinking of slipping away? She teased, leaning against the doorframe. He turned his face slowly, his dark eyes tracing every inch of her as if devouring her on the spot. Thinking of taking you with me, he replied, his voice husky from the long night of forbidden desires fulfilled. Luna approached him barefoot, her feet silent on the wooden floor. She stopped before him and placed her hands on his chest, the touch intimate and assured, leaving no room for hesitation between them. No one can know, Lorenzo, she whispered. No one will, he assured her, gripping her waist and lifting her as if she weighed nothing against the burdens of his soul. He set her on the balcony railing, facing the sea, and kissed her mouth with a blend of hunger and tenderness. His hands glided down the curve of her waist to her thighs, easing aside the delicate fabric with the precision of a man who knew the body he touched. She arched her back, breathless, biting her lower lip to stifle a moan that threatened to escape. "You drive me mad," he whispered in her ear. "Dangerous, beautiful, addictive." Their encounters, since that first day, unfolded beyond the corporate world's gaze. In private dinners, in luxurious penthouses, secret meetings in five-star hotels, and afternoons in discreet apartments rented just for them. Lorenzo knew how to hide an affair, but he couldn't conceal what he felt. Each time he undressed her, it was as if he were uncovering a precious secret. His touch was firm yet reverent, making Luna surrender not just her body, but her soul. He wasn't merely dominant in bed. He was attentive, observant, and unexpectedly tender once the passion ebbed. "Tell me what you want, Luna," he murmured, pinning her wrists above her head, their bodies pressed together, skin aflame. "With me, you can have it all." And she responded with her eyes, her moans, her body arching beneath his. For hours, they explored not only lust, but a profound connection. Their bodies recognized each other with an intimacy that was almost frightening. He approved with his tongue, his fingers, his gaze. And each time, Luna felt herself venturing too far, drowning in this man, perhaps never wanting to resurface. One night, in a hidden apartment in Higienopolis, after an intense and silent session of lovemaking where their bodies spoke more than words ever could, Luna lay on Lorenzo's chest and whispered, "You're going to destroy me." He wrapped his arms around her, his breath still uneven. "Or maybe I'm already destroyed by you." She smiled sadly, knowing deep down that their time had an expiration, the clock already ticking. But until then, she would be his, with every forbidden kiss, with all the pleasure the night could offer. It was an ordinary Tuesday at the Santis Investments. But for Lorenzo and Luna, ordinary days had ceased to exist. Every moment brimmed with anticipation, every glance bridging more than mere space. They were no longer just involved. They were immersed in one another. Their encounters, once frantic and ravenous, now layered with softer, more intimate shades. Lorenzo, the impenetrable and commanding man, revealed another side in her presence, while Luna, who had always worn a sharp armor, felt it melt away each time his deep voice whispered her name. That afternoon, Lorenzo entered the executive boardroom on the company's top floor, a rarely used space, hushed and draped in heavy curtains, with windows overlooking the entire city. He locked the door behind him. Moments later, Luna arrived, her heels echoing softly on the dark wooden floor, carrying a folder of documents they both knew was a mere pretense. "You're late," he said, without looking up. "And you're impatient," she retorted, setting the folder on the table and drawing closer. He pulled her by the waist, pressing her body against his, the heat of their skin piercing through the fabric. "Staring at you all day, without touching you, is torture." Luna cupped his face in her hands and kissed him. Deep, slow, demanding. Their kiss was no longer a game. It was surrender, possession. He spun her around, pressing her against the glass wall, her body exposed to the city below, though no one could truly see. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his lips brushing her nape. "With my eyes closed?" she breathed. And there, with contained passion and desire that transcended the physical, he claimed her, an act of affirmation, of binding. His hands knew exactly where to touch, his mouth charting paths only she understood. Luna, in every sigh, yielded as one who chooses captivity of her own free will. Later, still panting, he held her in his arms and placed her on the long conference table. Instead of leaving, he pulled up a chair and rested his head between her thighs, whispering, "I want to hear you again." Luna arched her back, her fingers gripping the table's edges as he explored her with wild patience. It was more than pleasure, it was devotion. Hours later, when they left the room separately, the world outside remained unchanged, but within them, something had shifted. The following days were filled with private rendezvous. Lorenzo invented excuses to keep her near, inviting her to review contracts in his office when nothing needed fixing, or bringing coffee to her desk himself, a gesture no one had ever witnessed. On a Friday night, he took her to dinner at one of Sao Paulo's most exclusive rooftops, with panoramic views, candles flickering, French wine flowing, and soft music in the background. She wore a red dress that seemed tailored to her form, while he donned a black suit without a tie, his hair slightly disheveled, as if fresh from bed or a dream. During dinner, she laughed at something he said, a genuine, light-hearted sound. And in that moment, Lorenzo realized he was falling. "I've never felt this way for anyone," he confessed, unreserved, unafraid. Luna bit her lip, moved, feeling the same but saying nothing. She simply took his hand across the table and met his eyes, conveying, "I'm going too, and there's no turning back." That night, they made love without haste, no urgency, only adoration. He undressed her as if unwrapping a rare gift, tracing kisses over every inch of her skin until their bodies moved in perfect harmony. When they reached their peak, it was together, their hearts beating in unison. In the dim room, lying entwined, he brushed his fingers across her face and said, "You are the only thing that brings color to this gray world." For the first time, Luna felt fear, not of the desire, but of what he had become, indispensable. Luna couldn't pinpoint when the routine lost its ordinariness and became a ceaseless dance of desire and anticipation. It was no longer just secret meetings. It was addiction, necessity. She knew his schedule by heart, the moments he passed her desk, the scent of him before he arrived. And Lorenzo memorized the sound of her footsteps in the hallway, the exact timbre of her voice, the precise taste of her skin beneath the sheets. It was no longer about hiding. It was about not resisting. On that Saturday, he surprised her with an unexpected invitation. A weekend away from Sao Paulo. No obligations, just the two of them. A private helicopter whisked them to a seaside house on Ilabella, surrounded by dense forest and miles from any neighbors. "This is where I hide when the world starts screaming," he said, his eyes lost in the ocean's vastness. Luna slipped off her shoes and stepped onto the wooden veranda, the wind tousling her hair and her light dress clinging to her curves like a natural caress. He watched her with a quiet hunger. "And you want to share this hideaway with me?" she asked. "I do," he replied, "because since you entered my life, there's no silence without you." She turned to him, her gaze softening yet intense. And in that instant, she understood. They weren't just desiring each other, they were surrendering. As the afternoon faded into golden light, they swam together, laughed, and teased with water games and stolen kisses in the sea. Back at the house, the air thickened with sexual tension, electric and unavoidable. She went to shower, but Lorenzo followed without a word, shedding his clothes and joining her under the hot water, which cascaded like a blessed rain. Though it was the fire between their bodies that truly burned. He pressed her against the stone wall, his eyes locked on hers. You make me insatiable, Luna. I want you, all the time. Then have me, she whispered, pulling him closer as she opened to him. Their lovemaking was primal, wet, and resounding, her moans echoing off the tiles, his hand firm on her waist, their bodies in a violent yet poetic rhythm. Afterward, still breathless, he carried her to the bedroom, laid her on the white linen bed, and continued, but slowly now, with eyes closed and kisses in every hidden corner, as if memorizing her essence. Luna, fully yielded, simply felt, and wept, not from sorrow, but from something unnamed. What is it? He asked, pausing. It's just, you touch me in a way no one ever has. You see me, Lorenzo. He kissed her slowly. I see you, Luna, and you make me want to be seen too. Later, by the fireplace, with wine in hand and sheets draped over their naked forms, they talked as they never had before. He shared the pressures of the company, sleepless nights, and loneliness masked by power. She, with teary eyes, spoke of always having to be strong, independent, untouchable, until him. You undo me, she said, but in a good way. He smiled and drew her into his lap. I want to undo you every night and rebuild you with pleasure. And he fulfilled that promise there, before the dancing flames, their bodies merging until one blurred into the other. On Sunday, as they returned to the city, something within them had transformed. It was no longer merely an affair. It was a bond, strong, warm, inevitable. Back at the office that week, their exchanged glances carried a silent intensity. Lorenzo would brush his fingers against her waist as he passed, and she would leave hidden notes in his folder with messages only they understood. You're still in me. He responded with flowers on her car, accompanied by notes like, and I'm not leaving. On Friday night, she arrived at his luxurious apartment, overlooking Ibirapuera Park, with glass walls and minimalist furnishings. But it was the bedroom that captivated her. Dark, intense, enveloping, like him. He led her to the center, blindfolded her with a cloth, and tied her wrists with a silk scarf. Trust me. Always. In that partial darkness, Luna discovered new depths of pleasure. He touched her with calm precision, each caress like a piano note, his tongue exploring sensitive spots, his fingers dancing over her skin, his low voice guiding the ritual. You're mine, Luna. With every sigh, every shiver, every moan. And she was, without doubt. That night, amid kisses, caresses, and whispers, something was sealed between them. A pact of pleasure, connection, and a love growing unchecked, which they no longer wished to flee. The routine could no longer conceal what passed between them. No matter how they feigned composure before others, there was an undeniable magnetism when Lorenzo and Luna shared a space. a silence screaming desire, a look declaring, "You're mine," even at a distance. Outside the corporate world, they lived fully. On another Friday, Luna arrived at his apartment in a navy blue silk dress with thin straps and a backless cut that revealed more than it hid, her high heels accentuating her legs, and red lipstick burning like a warning. "Tonight, you're mine. Completely." He awaited her with a candlelit dinner on the balcony, the city as their backdrop. He was barefoot, in a rolled-up white shirt, hair tousled as she liked. "I thought of something light for dinner," he said, pulling out her chair, "but I can't promise lightness for what follows." "I hope the later includes being tied to that leather armchair in your living room," she replied provocatively. He let out a low laugh, his gaze darkening. "Oh, certainly, and perhaps even more than that." They ate little. The wine was merely a pretext. Dessert was forgotten on the counter. In the living room, Lorenzo swept her into his arms and carried her to the leather sofa, where a velvet box awaited. Luna opened it to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a flame-shaped pendant. "Why did you set everything ablaze inside here?" he asked, touching his chest. "And I never want to extinguish that fire again." She said nothing, only kissed his mouth with raw hunger. Desire erupted once more. Lorenzo undressed her with reverent care, each piece removed like a sacred rite. When she stood naked before him, he knelt and gazed at her for long seconds. "You are a masterpiece," he whispered, "and I want to worship every inch of your body." He laid her on the soft rug, gently binding her wrists, and explored every curve as if tracing a map of ecstasy. He kissed her thighs, her shoulders, her back, until she could no longer discern where pleasure ended and surrender began. Luna was at his mercy, not as a submissive, but as one fully yielded. "I want to hear you beg me," he said, sliding his fingers between her legs with agonizing slowness. "Lorenzo, please, please, what?" "Take me, possess me, make me yours." And he did, with force and tenderness, with adoration. The room filled with muffled moans, ragged breaths, and whispered words between kisses and bites. Hours stretched like a film in slow motion, each act more intense than the last. At one point, he positioned her before the bedroom mirror, gripping her waist as he entered her slowly, his eyes locked on hers in the reflection. "Look at me, Luna. See how beautiful you are when you're mine," she cried out, biting her shoulder, her legs trembling with pleasure. No one had ever touched her like this, made her feel so much. Afterward, they moved to the kitchen, the balcony, the shower. No fatigue, only pent-up desire from days and nights without end. In the early hours, exhausted and tangled in rumpled sheets, she stroked his hair as he slept, with his head in her lap. His chest rose and fell in peaceful rhythm. It was rare to see him so vulnerable, so serene. In that silence of sated bodies, Luna realized something. She didn't just want him. She loved him, but she didn't say it yet. It wasn't the time. She simply kissed his forehead and whispered to herself, "I am already yours." On Sunday, Lorenzo took her for a drive through the city, windows down, Italian music playing, their hands intertwined on the gear shift. They stopped at a quaint bookstore in the old town, then strolled eating ice cream like teenagers disguised as powerful adults. They spoke of nothing serious, no work, no future, just savored the present. But at one moment, he looked at her with an intensity that was anything but casual. Luna, you've made me discover that pleasure isn't just in the body, it's in what we feel when body connects with soul. She swallowed hard, her heart racing. So, what are we? He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it with reverence. We are everything I never knew I needed. It was night in Sao Paulo, but the sky seemed more starlit than usual, as if the universe knew something profound was about to unfold. Luna stepped out of the car, her heart pounding, wearing a long black dress with a bare back that Lorenzo had sent over with a simple note. Tonight, you will be mine before all. She had no idea what to expect, only felt every inch of her body vibrating with anticipation. The event was a gala charity dinner hosted by Santis Investments in partnership with the government, held in an opulent hall filled with powerful figures, dim lights, and champagne on silver trays. Lorenzo stood at the front, commanding in his impeccable tuxedo, surrounded by business tycoons and politicians. But as soon as Luna entered, his eyes found hers, and everything else faded. She crossed the room like wind and fire, each step a challenge to his control. When she reached him, he took her hand and led her to the center of the dance floor. The music shifted to a sensual jazz, and before hundreds of onlookers, he pulled her close, their bodies melding. I don't care anymore, Luna. Let them see, let them know. You are my woman, the only one. She smiled, her eyes glistening. And you are my man, entirely, without reservations. They danced as if the world had vanished, their bodies gliding in perfect harmony, a silent confession of love and desire. That night, they returned to Lorenzo's penthouse, but the air held something sacred, a sweet, tender silence, a reverent hush. He undressed her slowly, kissing every part of her body with gratitude, and when he laid her on the bed, he made love to her as if offering his soul. There was no rush, no words, only the sound of bodies uniting, sighs intertwining, hands clasping in the dark. When pleasure washed over them like a warm, overwhelming wave, it was both physical and spiritual. More than an orgasm, it was love in its rawest, most complete form. Lorenzo looked into her eyes, still inside her, his body trembling from the depth of their surrender, and said without hesitation, "Marry me." Luna widened her eyes, her chest heaving. "Lorenzo, I'm yours, tired of pretending to be invincible. Only with you am I whole. And I want to live this every day, every night." She smiled, tears streaming silently. "Yes, I am yours, forever." In the days that followed, everyone knew, the company, their friends, the curious. But no one dared question it, for seeing them together revealed something greater than conventions, rules, or judgments. They were no longer hiding, they were living. From the heights of Villa Luminosa, the Tyrrhenian Sea stretched like an infinite tapestry of deep blue. It was late afternoon in Capri, the sun setting behind the cliffs as if bowing to the island's beauty, and the love consummating there. Luna stood on the main suite's balcony, wrapped in a white silk robe that danced with the salty breeze. Her hair, still damp from the bath, cascaded down her back like a sensual frame. Her eyes were closed, breathing in the waves crashing on the rocks and the scent of Sicilian lemons from the gardens below. Lorenzo appeared behind her quietly, holding 2 glasses of sparkling wine, his gaze fixed on the curves he knew by heart and never tired of exploring. I could watch you like this every day of my life, he said, pressing his body against hers. Then watch, because I don't plan on leaving. He smiled, handed her a glass, and pulled her by the waist, their bodies aligning. The kiss was slow and heated, like the days they had spent on the island since arriving to celebrate their engagement. Mornings were for diving into secret grottos, like the legendary Blue Grotto. Afternoons for wandering hand in hand through Anacapri's charming streets, laughing, teasing, desiring with every touch. Nights were hers alone. Amid white linen sheets, balconies overlooking the sea, and private dinners served by discreet chefs. But that night, he wanted more. Lorenzo led her to the private garden, where cushions and candles were scattered under a centuries-old olive tree. There, he laid her on the soft fabrics and slowly removed her robe. The candlelight danced on her golden skin, his eyes, always dominant, now brimming with adoration. I want you forever, he said, covering her body with slow kisses like a prayer. I am already yours. Since the first touch, she replied, gasping, her fingers digging into his back. Their union was silent, intense, absolute. Among the tree's branches, stars twinkled, and in that hidden garden, their bodies merged as one. He loved her slowly, then with more force, then slowly again, as if etching every memory into her with pleasure. Afterward, lying under the Italian sky, he whispered, what if we make this our home, Luna? Leave the whole world behind? She turned to him, her face against his chest. My home is wherever you are, but this island knows how to make promises. He smiled, kissed her forehead, and pulled her closer. Then let Capri be our eternal secret. And with the sea's rhythm lulling their still entwined bodies, the future felt simple, because now they had everything they needed: pleasure, love, and each other.